You guys, what's going on? As you can see, my hair look a little rough this morning. I just took it off the bonnet, got a shower, did my little light makeup real quick, like okay. Did my skincare routine is like putting on Pond's. Like that's all I do. I see y'all putting on the serums and I'm like, I need to get me some serum at one of these days. But y'all see this mess? Not mess. My hair. We gonna get it together right now. So, ooh. Oh, look at that. It has some time. So I wanted to come on here and just be like, hello, guys. What's going on? Welcome in. Welcome in. I am Jessica Harris, and I am the founder of Ignite Your Glow, which is truly a movement dedicated to women in Christ who are ready to break down the barriers of self-limiting belief systems and old mindsets. And that is where my podcast comes into play as well. And I'm excited, you guys, to just really have you on here because this is really just a channel where faith meets power and you begin to heal, grow, and transform your life. So, y'all, come in and come on in. As you can see, I am doing my hair this morning. I took out my twists because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to, and something different to me was like, wear your hair out. And I'm like, I could wear my hair out. It's been a while. So I don't remember the last time I took my hair out and just like was flat ironing it the way that I've been flat ironing it lately. So I wanted to just be more intentional with that part. I'm not gonna lie. I had a thought to like buy a wig, and I may still do that because I had like this vision of like how full my hair was, and I was like, girl, we gonna need some hair for that style. And I was debating about doing like a sew-in, but I'm like, you know what? If I do a wig, all I gotta do is take it off, and then I just put it back on, right? Like there's very little maintenance with that part. I know people like wash their wigs and stuff like that because my ex's mom used to do that with hers. She would like wash hers because she would have her wigs for like years. And I'm talking about years. She would have her wigs for years. God rest her soul. So I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad idea, to be for real. So I'm gonna see. I think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna invest in one. I think I'm gonna see, even if it's just so I can like have like a pop of color and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm definitely debating on that part. I think the biggest reason why I didn't do the wig part as of yet was just because I didn't know how to do that lace front thing. And I know there's like videos and stuff like that, but y'all, I really would like for someone else to do it. I know one of the girls at my job, she had gotten hers done. She sent me the Instagram of the lady who did hers. Hers came out really pretty. I was like, girl, your hair is cute. She's like, girl, it's a wig. I said, girl, you bought it. It's your hair. Anyways, so it looked really good. And I was like, you know what? I may just do that. And I've seen a couple of other people like have wigs that look really, really nice. And I'm like, you know what, God? I may have to invest in a wig. So that's my thought for that part there. So I'm excited. So today pretty much is like a day in the life of Jess video. I'm really just getting myself ready because I have to actually do some recordings today. My goal today is really to just like get my podcast episodes up and moving because it is Tuesday. Yes. And y'all, I can't believe we're in March like already. And I'm just looking like, yo, I don't want to say like the year has flown by, but the fact like January came and left, the fact that February, right, just came and just left is like bananas to me, in all honesty. Because I'm like, yo, we just was like in the beginning of February. And now here we are switching off into the month of March. But bonus, burns my ear a little bit. The month of March is, Women's History Month. So I'm excited because I'm like, y'all, we've been on this journey of redefining her. We've been on this movement of really helping other women to redefine themselves as well, right? And just giving them permission to take up space and just to own their voice and whatnot. And I'm like, yo, this is so awesome. So fun fact, I actually had the opportunity recently to speak on a panel testifying to my story of overcoming and stuff. And it wasn't like just like my story. There was about 20 women, I believe, that were present. And y'all, just the amount of women who have overcome different obstacles was just so inspiring. There was a woman who talked about how, she experienced a car accident and that left her with traumatic brain injury. There was another woman whose children fall on the spectrum, and how she's had to advocate, for their health and well-being, not just within schools, but even just, when it came to the lawyers, the law, and stuff like that, about how they treat children, those who fall on the spectrum, those who have special needs. And for me, that's a very, very special and touchy area, because we went through that with one of my sons, who also falls on the spectrum. So when I say understanding that there's definitely power in being able to hone in your voice. So I didn't go through the struggles that she did regarding the special needs part and having to advocate there, because the resources in the state that I was in at that time were extremely beneficial. But I definitely actually, I take that back. I did have to advocate. I had to advocate more when he got into elementary school. Because in daycare, it was different. But in elementary school, there was some advocacy that had to take place. So, no, that's actually right. But I feel like the biggest part for us, for my family, really came for having to advocate for healthcare, for my kids in particular. And I wasn't really going to go down this route, but y'all, I feel like I'm doing my hair, so it's a little bit of story time, right? But I wanted to just pitch in and say, listen, use your voice, right? And know that it's okay to be an advocate. And listen, I had to look at the concept when I was younger, that if you don't advocate for yourself, who else will? For me, I became a mom in my early 20s, I was 21 when I had my first child. And a lot of doctors and stuff like that, not with my first daughter, but during my first pregnancies. So for me, I had 2 miscarriages prior to having my daughter. So when I had those miscarriages and stuff, I was younger. I think I was how old was I? I think I was 20. I may have, no. I think I was 19 for one of them. I may have been 19 years old with my first pregnancy. And I remember just really thinking God, it's so crazy how I was treated at the hospital during that pregnancy, when I was going through the miscarriage, and how the doctors and nurses and staff treated me. And this is the part where I've always had this thing. It's this inside of me, this right, to advocate for those who feel like they can't speak up, because I've been in situations, in circles, where the people who should be, speaking up on your behalf for helping you are not doing their job effectively. So when I was listening to these ladies really just beginning to testify to how they've had to maneuver, how they've had to, speak up, how they've used their voices, how they've gone ahead, and encourage other people and use their platforms, it truly just reminds me of the experiences that I have had, as a parent, that I have had even as just a woman, right, in healthcare and stuff like that, of how there's a lot of disparities that take place when it comes to getting help. Whether that's with your mental health, whether that is with your physical health, your emotional health, whether that is with your pregnancy health, right? There's this disparity that takes place, and it does leave a gap. Whether that's with your insurance, whether that's with other pieces, finding a doctor that's in network, y'all, there's so many gaps to a lot of the systems that we have in place. And depending on what state that you live in, it's definitely more noticeable for sure. I've heard a lot of horror stories from women in other places, and I'm God, it has to be the state and how they handle things. So I definitely just want to encourage any woman, right, who's listening right now, to continue to advocate for yourself, to continue to speak up. Y'all hear me if you watch any of my previous videos. I'm always saying this is a channel where you are to, be encouraged on your faith walk journey of love, life, and everything in between, entrepreneurship and more. And I'm here to help you amplify your voice. Why? Because I've been in situations where people's voices were not seen to be heard out loud. I mean, I've had people in so many, I'm losing my comb, y'all, who felt like they couldn't speak up. So I feel like having the understanding of the power in your words is important. And I feel like sometimes we don't take into consideration just how powerful our story really is. Now, you may be looking like, okay, well, what do you mean, right? And I have to look at the concept like, there are people who silently go through things every single day because of a need, right, that they have. And people may or may not be readily available to help them, or people may have tried to help them in the past, or people may not have the bandwidth to help them, right? But then there should be organizations, right, that are in place that can provide assistance, that can help, that can offer services, and yet somehow, some way, people are left, in this middle part of not really being able to get them. And I was looking at the article again earlier today because it's what comes to mind is that woman, and I believe she was in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, who lost her 2 children when they were sleeping in the van because of hypothermia. Like, one was 9 years old, her son, and then I think it was her daughter who was 2 months old. And she lost her children because they basically were too cold, like they froze to death. And I watched like a mini clip, not the whole video, of the dad who spoke out. And I know hearing his words of stating, well, she didn't tell me to the degree of what was going on. All she did was ask, for me to come get my kids. But she didn't state like all the stuff that was happening. Now, I know to every story, there's 3 sides, right? There's his side, her side, and the truth. So I can't speak to what the full story was of what she may have asked of him. But if you're telling me, right, that he's telling her or she's telling him, my children are freezing, we're in a car, we're homeless, yada, yada, like, can they come with you? I don't know. It's like heartbreaking, right, to hear like there's no place that they can go and you're just like not willing at that time. And this isn't to bash nobody. This isn't to come against like anything. Do I feel like what was done there was not proper? Yes. But am I sitting here about to like put a torch to him? 100,000% no. I'm not. And I know that the kids passing away was hard, hands down. I'm not removing that part here by a long shot. But I also don't believe that it is my role to be the judge and executioner in his story. Everybody has a story. Everybody's gone through something. I don't know the reasons as to why. I don't know their history. I don't know how their conversation flow. I don't know. I mean, some people just don't do what they should be doing because they just what they are or how they want to behave and stuff. I don't know the circumstances. And I'm not going to pretend to fill the gaps based on speculation. But what I am going to say is that there should have been other things. Like, she advocated for herself, right? She tried. She said she went to multiple places, people looking for help and wasn't able to do it. And I feel like it's crazy to hear that. But at the same time, it's like sometimes people have to confront the hard truths that systems are broken. And unfortunately, her children, it came with a cost with her because she lost her children in that. And that is an extremely, extremely sad situation, 100,000%. And I feel for her on that part there. But at the same time, what the beauty was, not in that aspect, but what happened afterwards was that a local organization, I don't remember offhand if it was a church, because that's the article that I was reading earlier, was stating like they heard her story and they wanted to do something. They didn't just want to, be hearers of the story and not doers. And they went ahead and fixed up a place, got a place for her, fixed it up, furnished it, got food for her, and have the rent paid up for her for the next year. So this way she would never have to, so she wouldn't have to worry about those situations and circumstances. And the city made a note to also say that that watching this, right, what took place and what happens here is now causing them to reevaluate their outreach when it comes to people who are close to losing their homes, when it comes to people who are in similar predicaments or situations. And that's why I said, like, although it it's unfortunate 100%, right? That those children had to lose their lives, that this mother has to grieve the loss of children that most likely didn't have to pass, right? Had they had the adequate place to stay in. That the city acknowledges their fault in the system here. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, she should have X, Y, and Z. Listen, life happens in unfortunate situations. I have experienced my own personal life happening situations. I have met people in my lifetime who have experienced unfortunate situations. Like, the reality is that life be lifing. And things pop up, things happen. And that's why I said I'm not going to sit here and be judge, executioner, and etc. to anybody's story. Absolutely not. Listen, God knows what was going on before them babies passed. God knew what was happening while them babies were here and what was going on in between. God done already knew the story of them children. And I have to believe by faith that because God knew and because God is who he is, that whatever needs to be corrected, he will do so in the ways in which he believes is just in the eyes of the Lord. Period. And that's how I have to see that situation. Because I am not God, and I am not going to sit here and try to point blame to a mother who just lost her children. 1,000% not. Y'all ain't about to, I'm not going to be that person. I refuse. Now, I don't remember her name, so forgive me, y'all. Because, like I said, the story was coming to mind as I'm just talking. So I wasn't planning on talking about her story, but it was on my mind to talk about. And I really just want to highlight, like, sometimes, right, bad things happen because changes have to take place. And it's unfortunate that it comes at a cost of losing children. But may the changes that now have the ability to occur begin to form. And may there not be another mother, right, who has to go through something similar. I remember, I don't remember this woman's name either, an article, this was years ago, when I was an AmeriCorps volunteer. And I remember reading an article about a legislation that had been passed in Boston. Now, this would have been the early, 2010s, 2011-ish, around there. And I remember reading this article, and I remember it was about this woman in Boston and how they had, how she had, unfortunately, didn't make enough hours at her job to be able to pay rent. So she was working, didn't have enough. And I think her job, she didn't have enough, so she ended up getting kicked out of her apartment. I think she had to bring her kids with her to the job. And the job got mad at that part, but she didn't have a place for them to go. And she ended up losing her job. I remember her having to sleep. And I remember her asked, she was couch surfing and stuff. But at the time, the law didn't recognize couch surfing as being homeless. They didn't recognize that as a situation because the way the law was worded in Massachusetts was you had to be living in uninhabitable conditions for 6 or so months. And it's so you're telling me that this woman who's a mother of children, right, young kids, has to live in a unhabitable place with her children for 6 months before the state will even recognize the fact that she's even homeless. And then not only that, but now she's at risk for CPS to get involved because the children are living in a place that's uninhabitable based on the conditions that the state is stating that needs to be present in order for her to get the help and the resources that she needs. Do you see how backwards that sounds? Now, I don't know the current status of the law in that aspect. I know the law had to change. And I know her story, I don't know if her story was part of that change in full, but I know her story was tied together with that based on the article that I had read because it talked about both parts. And I remember being so angry at that time because it was y'all put her in a position to fail. See, she was working, but she didn't make enough money from her job to pay the rent that she had. And if you know Boston doesn't have rent control. So landlords literally are out here charging money out the hoo-ha, and it makes no sense. And that's a whole nother story. And I've worked in this field. So I'm literally speaking from like firsthand knowledge here. And when I think about like the situation and the pieces and stuff like that, I'm like, yo, ain't no way, right, that this is what is happening here, but that's the case, right? And people aren't talking about it. People aren't saying it. Now, like I said, this was back in that early 2010, 2011 stage, but it was the concept that a lot of these states, right, that are in this country have old systems that are not meaningful for the livelihood of a person who may be struggling. Right? There are a lot of old systems that don't always recognize the reach that is necessary for those who may be battling a crisis. There may not always be readily available that assistance for people who need that immediate help to fill the gap, because the structure says you're not poor enough to receive help, but you're not rich enough or well off enough to make do with what you have. And then you have this medium space here where people make just over the threshold, so I can't get this help, but I'm just underneath, so I'm still struggling. And there's that gap that has occurred. And that gap has definitely occurred throughout my life. As a child and stuff, I've witnessed it, I've watched it, I've seen the pieces and stuff. And even like just watching people, even now as an adult, and just watching like how this gap continues to manifest. And it's disheartening, right, when you see that, because you're like, God. And I believe that there are a lot of people who do have it on their hearts and minds to make change, to make effective policies. I do believe that there are people who do have the heart and mind of God, who are coming in with ideas of businesses and nonprofits that are here and able to fill these gaps. I do believe that there are people who are created to be solutions to so many of these problems. Now, I'm not saying every problem is going to be solved, but what I am saying is that where there is a will, there is a way, and that God is able to make a way out the wilderness for people. And if that means that he would have to use your story, right, to do it, then he'll do it. Because that woman's story in Detroit, as unfortunate as it was, caused a whole city to shift their stance. Now, we'll see in the coming days, in the coming months, and coming years, right, how well they move in this direction. But it took her story for something to happen. The same thing in Massachusetts, right? The woman's story that I told y'all about, who was homeless and her children got taken away. It took a situation for it to be put in the face of who needed to see it so they can confront what it was that they were doing. I don't know the thought process that went behind these legislative actions, right? But I have to believe that somewhere down the line, someone said, hey, we're still human beings. And because we're still human, let's be mindful to still act like a human being to another human being. And rest assured, understanding that just because they're in an unfortunate situation doesn't mean that they should be treated less than. How y'all like my hair? I like it. I feel like it flows. Bounce, bounce. But I'm sharing that part because when I come on my platform and I'm talking about, yo, it's time to amplify your voices, I'm not saying that just so you can make a quick buck and done. No, I'm saying that because your story, your words, your songs, your poems, your written record, listen, whatever it is that you do in your business, whatever the case may be for you, it makes an impact. You may not be here to see the impact, but there's a legacy that begins to take place, right? The concept that comes to mind is like, and I know it's said, I just don't know who said it or whatever, so y'all figure it out. But like, it's like we stand on the shoulders, right, of greatness. Because reality is that there were other people who have paved this road for us, that we stand on their shoulders to be able to be in this position, to have platforms like this, to speak out loud vocally like this, to be able to have the rights that we do have right now. Y'all can argue in the comments about the limitations, but reality speaks right now that I can speak out loud on this and not feel as though harm is coming at my door at this very moment, right? Because in other places, they have that attack. So understanding that concept there. Government and politics get tricky, it gets icky, it gets stucky, it gets sticky, yucky, mucky, ucky, ugh. Right? It does. It is what it is. But it's also a part of what it is that we have to experience. And we can't be ignorant to the devices and schemes and plots that are at play. So may we all just be mindful and be discerning about whatever is happening, right, in politics. And may we pray for the leaders, whoever they are, in whatever city, state, country, listen, not just here, but everywhere, right, that reign right now. And may we pray that the will of God is what comes forth, despite the person who is being used. Because there is a lot of movement and a lot of things being said and a lot of tactics that are being used. And we have to be able to call on God and through all of this. So that is like my TED Talk, my hair talk for the day. But yes, thank you so much for sticking around and getting ready with me this morning as I go ahead and get ready to take on some other tasks. But that is just food for thought. Think about the power in your story, the power and why advocating and advocacy is so necessary. And not just advocacy, not just advocating, right, amongst yourselves, but advocating and when I say advocating, I mean like if there is stuff that you know is personal and you can show up and make a difference with laws being made in your city or town, show up. Advocating in the spirit. Listen, God, you are my advocate. This is what's happening. What is the strategy of doing X, Y, and Z? And lean in, especially if you've been pressed upon you, with certain things on your heart. Lean in and ask him what that looks like pertaining to the future of what's happening here, and lean in. So that is my talk. I know I said that already, but yeah. So if you have enjoyed this episode today, definitely go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Listen, y'all like my little cheetah print pajamas? Yeah, I know. I was like, we're gonna be half up dressed and pajamas today. Just for now. I got regular clothes later, but for right now, this is what my comfort was. So yes, y'all. Yeah. Just continue to walk in what it is that you're called to do. Continue to understand that God is definitely going to use you and call on you. And don't be afraid for the rooms that he brings you to. It may look a little different. There may be some pivots. There may be some pieces that you're kind of like, God, what is happening in here, right? But allow God to be God and don't limit him. Don't put him in a box. Let him be exactly who he says he is to you and so much more. So check out the links in the description box below, you guys. Subscribe to this channel, right? But also subscribe to my podcast channel. I'm going to start moving some content over there. So definitely subscribe there. I'm really pumped and excited. So yes. And yeah, listen, I'm pumped. So peace and blessings to all of you guys and have an amazing day.